Chuck Wepner was once the definition of toughness, a relentless fighter who stood toe-to-toe with Muhammad Ali and inspired the Rocky franchise. He wasn't the fastest, nor the most skilled, but he had an unbreakable will and a chin of iron. His 1975 battle with Ali made him a legend, proving he could hang with the best. But while Hollywood cashed in on his story, Wepner himself was left behind now. At 85 years old, the former warrior faces a grim reality. Years of brutal fights have left his body broken with chronic pain and lingering health problems. Financial struggles followed him long after retirement, and his legal troubles only made things worse. Despite inspiring one of the most iconic sports films of all time, he never saw the riches or recognition that should have come with it. The world remembers Rocky, but few remember the man behind the story. This is the tragic reality of Chuck Wepner's life. Today, Chuck Wepner was never supposed to be a boxing legend born in 1939. In Bayonne, New Jersey, he grew up in a working-class neighborhood where toughness was a way of life. He wasn't a prodigy in the ring, nor was he blessed with lightning-fast hands or Polish technique. But what he did have was grit. The kind of raw, unshakable toughness couldn't be taught before stepping into the ring. Wepner served in the U.S. Marine Corps, where he learned to take punishment and keep moving forward. That resilience would become the defining trait of his boxing career. Unlike the slick defensive fighters of his era, Wepner's strategy was simple: absorb whatever his opponents threw at him and keep coming forward. He was the embodiment of the blue-collar fighter. Never the favorite. Always the underdog, but impossible to put away. Wepner turned professional in 1964, grinding his way through the heavyweight ranks with a style that made every fight a war. His opponents quickly realized that knocking him out was easier said than done. He could take an absurd amount of punishment and still press forward, breaking fighters down with sheer willpower. But his durability came at a cost. He suffered frequent cuts, earning him the nickname, the Bayonne Bleeder. In nearly every fight, his face became a bloody mess. Yet he refused to quit. If there was one thing Wepner was known for, it was his ability to survive his reputation as one of the sport's toughest men. Eventually caught the attention of boxing promoter, who saw his potential as an entertaining, never say, die fighter. He wasn't the most skilled boxer, but he was the kind of opponent who would make anyone work for a victory. He fought his way through the heavyweight division, taking on some of the most dangerous punchers of the era, including Sonny Liston, Ernie Terrell, and George Foreman. Even when he lost, he always made it a battle. But it wasn't until 1975 that Wepner would get the opportunity of a lifetime, the chance to face Muhammad Ali for the heavyweight championship of the world. It was a fight few believed he deserved. Ali had just regained his title after defeating George Foreman in the legendary Rumble in the Jungle, and many saw Wepner as nothing more than an easy opponent to keep the champ active. The fight was expected to be a one-sided affair, with Ali putting Wepner away early, but Wepner had other plans. He knew he wasn't the fastest or most skilled fighter, but he believed in his toughness, trained harder than ever, preparing himself to endure whatever Ali threw at him. This was his shot at boxing immortality, and he wasn't going down without a fight when Wepner stepped into the ring with Ali on March 24th, 1975. The world expected a quick finish. What they got instead was a display of resilience that no one saw coming. He would go on to last nearly 15 grueling rounds against one of the greatest fighters of all time, proving that heart and determination could take a man further than anyone imagined. This was the fight that would define Wepner's career the moment that would forever link his name to boxing history. But while the battle with Ali would make him famous, it would also mark the beginning of a long and painful struggle, one that would take him far beyond the ring and into a life filled with hardship, regret, and lost opportunities. On March 24th, 1975, Chuck Wepner stepped into the ring at the Richfield Coliseum in Ohio to face Muhammad Ali for the heavyweight championship of the world. No one gave him a chance. He was supposed to be just another name on Ali's list of victories. A rugged but outmatched underdog who would crumble under the champion's superior speed and skill. The world expected a quick fight, an easy payday for Ali. But Wepner had other plans. He wasn't there just to survive. He was there to fight from the opening bell. Ali danced around Wepner, landing sharp jabs and lightning-fast combinations. The champ was in full control, picking his shots, using his superior footwork to keep Wepner at bay. But Wepner wasn't concerned with winning rounds. He was there to wear Ali down. Moving forward, no matter how many punches he took, he absorbed everything Ali threw at him and kept pressing forward, making it clear that this wasn't going to be an easy night for the champ. Then, in the 9th round, the unthinkable happened. Wepner landed a hard shot to Ali's ribs, followed by a short right hand to the body. Suddenly, Ali stumbled and hit the canvas. The underdog from Bayonne, New Jersey, had knocked down the greatest fighter in the world. The crowd erupted. The impossible had happened. For a brief moment, Wepner believed he was about to shock the world. He turned to his trainer and said, "Start the car. We're going to the bank. We're millionaires." But Ali wasn't finished. Furious and determined, the champ got back to his feet, quickly regaining control of the fight over the next several rounds. Ali picked Wepner apart, landing punishing shots that opened deep cuts on the challenger's face. Wepner's toughness, however, refused to let him quit, despite the pain. The blood and the exhaustion, he kept moving forward, taking everything Ali threw at him, finally in the 15th round. After nearly going the distance, Wepner was knocked down for the first time in the fight. He struggled to his feet, but the referee stopped the bout. Ali had won by TKO, though he had lost. Wepner had done something no one expected. He had lasted almost the full fight against Muhammad Ali. He had gone from an unknown club fighter to a household name, earning respect for his grit and determination. He had proved that heart could take a man further than skill alone. But while the fight cemented Wepner's place in boxing history, it would also be the start of a cruel twist of fate. One that saw his story become one of the most profitable in Hollywood history, without him ever seeing a dime. A few months after Wepner's battle with Ali, a struggling actor and aspiring screenwriter named Sylvester Stallone sat down to watch the fight. What he saw was more than just a boxing match. He saw a story, a no-name underdog with a never-say-die attitude, taking on the greatest fighter in the world and almost making it to the final bell. It was the kind of inspiring against the odds tale. The people would love that fight became the direct inspiration for Rocky, the 1976 film, that would go on to become one of the most beloved sports movies of all time. The story of Rocky Balboa, an underdog fighter given a once-in-a-lifetime shot at the heavyweight title, was a reflection of Wepner's real-life experience. Parallels were undeniable. Like Wepner, Rocky wasn't the most skilled fighter, but he had heart. Like Wepner, Rocky took a brutal beating, but kept coming forward, and like Wepner, Rocky shocked the world by going the distance. With The Champion, the film became a massive success, launching a franchise that would span decades and generate hundreds of millions of dollars. Stallone became a superstar, and Rocky became a symbol of perseverance and determination. But while the world fell in love with Rocky Balboa, the real-life fighter who inspired the story was left in the shadows. Wepner wasn't credited for inspiring the film. He wasn't paid for his story. His name wasn't even mentioned in connection to Rocky while Hollywood made millions. Wepner was still struggling to make a living. Years later, when Wepner realized how closely Rocky mirrored his own life, he decided to take action in 2003. Nearly 3 decades after the first Rocky film was released, Wepner filed a lawsuit against Stallone for using his story without compensation. The case dragged on for several years before finally being settled out of court, while the terms of the settlement were never made public. It's widely believed that Wepner received a payout, though nowhere near what he could have made, had he been properly credited from the beginning. Despite the lawsuit, Wepner has spoken positively about Stallone in interviews, even appearing alongside him in public events. But the reality remains. While Rocky became one of the most successful film franchises of all time, Wepner never saw the kind of financial success that should have come with being its real-life inspiration. His story had been told on the big screen green, but he never truly got to reap the rewards. The world knew his struggle. They never knew just how much he had lost, despite the fame. Chuck Wepner gained from his legendary fight with Muhammad Ali and his connection to Rocky. His success never translated into lasting financial security. He had the heart of a warrior, but he fought in an era where even world title fights didn't guarantee life-changing paydays, unlike modern fighters who make millions from pay-per-view, sales sponsorships, and endorsement deals. Webb's biggest payday barely covered his expenses after the Ali fight. He continued boxing for a few more years, taking fights wherever he could to make a living. But the wear and tear on his body, along with his aging reflexes, made it clear that his time in the ring was coming to an end. His career fizzled out without the massive paydays that would have set him up for retirement by the time he hung up his gloves. In the late 1970s, he found himself in the same position as many other retired fighters, scraping by trying to find a way to make ends meet. In a world that had moved on with no major financial backing and few opportunities in boxing, Wepner took a regular job as a liquor salesman in his hometown of Bayonne, New Jersey. It was a far cry from the bright lights of championship fights, but it was honest work. He became a local legend, with customers recognizing him and asking about his fights with Ali and other heavyweight greats. But while the stories brought him attention, they didn't bring him wealth. He was still just another working-class man, trying to make a living as time passed. Financial pressures began to mount. Wepner's years in the ring had left him with chronic pain and health issues, and the reality of life after boxing was far harsher than he had ever expected. Unlike the fictional Rocky Balboa, who found redemption and financial success in the later films, the real-life fighter who inspired him was struggling desperate to keep his life together. Wepner made a decision that would haunt him forever. In the 1980s, he became involved in drug trafficking, distributing cocaine, a choice that would cost him dearly. Former heavyweight contender, the man who had once gone toe-to-toe with Muhammad Ali, now found himself caught in a downward spiral. In 1985, Wepner was arrested and charged with drug distribution. The news shocked those who had followed his career just a decade earlier. He had been celebrated as the ultimate underdog, a man who had stood up to the greatest fighter of all time. Now he was facing serious legal trouble, accused of crimes that could put him behind bars for years. The trial was a painful chapter in Wepner's life. Unlike in the ring, where he could take a punch and keep moving forward, there was no escaping the consequences of his actions. In the end, he was convicted and sentenced to nearly 2 years in prison. The man who had fought on boxing's biggest stage was now confined to a prison cell, his once proud legacy overshadowed by his mistakes. By the time Webb was released in 1988, everything had changed. The boxing world had moved on. A new generation of fighters had taken center stage, and Webb's name had faded from the spotlight. He was no longer the underdog warrior who had captured the public's imagination. He was just another ex-athlete trying to rebuild his life after a massive fall from grace. The transition back into society wasn't easy with a criminal record and a damaged reputation. Wepner struggled to find his footing. He returned to working as a liquor salesman, trying to put his past behind him. But the years of financial instability, legal troubles and missed opportunities wore heavily on him. For many, Wepner's story should have had a different ending. He had given boxing one of its greatest underdog moments, inspired an entire film, franchise, and proven that determination could take a man further than talent alone. Yet he never reaped the rewards of his efforts, while Hollywood turned his story into a billion-dollar franchise. Wepner himself was left to navigate the harsh realities of life without financial security or long-term recognition. His time behind bars only added another layer of tragedy to his story. He had gone from a celebrated fighter to a forgotten name, struggling to hold on to the last remnants of his legacy. The cheers of the crowd were long gone, replaced by the harsh reality that life outside the ring could be even more brutal than any opponent he had ever faced. Chuck Wepner built his career on toughness, taking brutal punches, fighting through blood and pain, and refusing to quit. But now, at 85 years old, the punishment he endured in the ring has caught up with him. In devastating ways, his body has been left broken, his mind struggling, and his daily life consumed by the lasting effects of his time as a human punching bag. Decades of fights, sparring, and brutal wars in the ring left Wepner with chronic pain that never went away. Severe arthritis makes every movement a struggle. His knees, back, and hands, once his greatest weapons, now barely function without agony. His joints have deteriorated after years of absorbing the kind of punishment that would have sent most fighters to the canvas. Even simple tasks like standing up, walking, or getting out of bed have become painful challenges, and then there's the damage that can't be seen. The long-term effects of repeated blows to the head. Like many fighters of his era, Wepner fought in a time when concussions weren't properly understood, and no one talked about brain damage. Fighters were expected to shake off head trauma and keep going. But as the years passed, the symptoms became undeniable. Wepner has spoken about his struggles with memory loss, moments of confusion and difficulty recalling details from his past, though he has never been officially diagnosed. Many fear that he is experiencing the early stages of dementia, a tragic fate that has claimed so many former boxers, the same iron chin that once made him famous. The ability to take punch after punch without falling may have been his greatest downfall. Mental toll is just as heavy. Wepner was once a warrior, a man who could take on the best in the world. Now he finds himself trapped in a body that no longer works the way it used to. The physical decline, combined with years of financial struggles, has left him battling not just pain, but depression. Fighters thrive on competition, on having a purpose. But when the crowd stops cheering and the world moves on, what's left at 85, Wepner's quality of life has diminished drastically. He lives with constant pain, struggling to move, struggling to remember and fighting a battle. He never trained for the battle against time and aging. His toughness carried him through the ring, but it can't stop the inevitable decline that so many fighters face. Despite everything he accomplished, Chuck Wepner remains largely forgotten in the boxing world. His legacy is forever tied to Rocky. Yet while the fictional character became one of the most celebrated underdogs in cinema history, the real man behind the story never received the recognition he deserved. Fans still watch Rocky and celebrate the heart, determination, and grit of the fictional Balboa. But few remember the real-life fighter who lived that story. The character became a pop culture icon, but Wepner himself never got the financial rewards or long-term acknowledgement that should have come with his contributions to the sport. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Wepner doesn't have a major platform to share his story, while some former fighters become trainers, commentators, or public speakers. Wepner's post-boxing career never led to those kinds of opportunities, though he occasionally makes appearances at boxing events and conventions. His public presence has faded with time. His once famous name is now only remembered by hardcore boxing fans and those who take the time to look beyond the Rocky films. In many ways, Chuck Wepner's story is the ultimate cautionary tale of boxing. He gave everything to the sport: his body, his mind, his blood, and his health. Yet he was never properly rewarded for it, while his fight with Ali remains legendary, and while Rocky will always be linked to him. Wepner himself was left behind. He is a reminder of how brutal the fight game can be, not just inside the ring, but outside of it. The money dries up, the fame fades, and the physical toll lasts forever. Wepner survived one of the greatest fights in boxing history, inspired one of the most successful movie franchises of all time, and proved that heart could take a man further than talent alone. But in the end, he has been left to fight his greatest battle, alone, the battle against time, illness, and being forgotten.